Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be taking the Apple IIc that we unboxed in the last video and fixing it up. So, hope you stick around. So I hear the disc spinning, but what I don't hear is the heads moving. So I think we'll have to take this guy apart and take a look and see what we can find out inside. All right, so I ran the built-in diagnostics and it's telling me that it is an error with the glue chip. So now let's really take it apart and see if we can't see what's going on. All right, so it's been a couple days, but we've got the Apple IIc here. I've ordered a replacement glue chip for it, just a PLA. Reactive microcells, like a replacement for 10 bucks. And again, we haven't opened this up, so we're not even sure what's wrong. Apple IIc glue chip, $10. And there's our glue chip. All right, so no idea if it's socketed or soldered. Like I said, I haven't opened this machine up yet. But I also ordered this. This is some replacement RAM. I got this from Twisty Wrist Arcade. It's 4164, and you never know when it's going to go bad, especially if it's MT RAM. And again, like I said, I haven't opened this up yet, so I don't know what's in here. Hopefully it's not MT RAM, but if it is, probably need to replace it. So this is Texas Instruments branded, manufactured, but may not need it. Good to have just in case. So first thing we have to do is get this guy open. And we've got 6 screws to do that, plus the screws that hold the floppy drive in. And we will need to take the floppy drive out to get access to the system board, I think. So these will have to come out eventually, but not yet. And these rubber feet are turning into goo. All right. So there is a little clip inside the case. It's about in line with the N key. It's a little off center. We need to pop that open. All right, got that off and didn't damage anything, which is always a plus. So now to see the glue chip, we do have to take the floppy drive out. So we'll flip it back over. Carefully flip it back over. And the floppy drive should just lift out. I'm gonna take the keyboard out first, I think. So that folds out of the way. And there we have the inner workings of the Apple IIc. We need to find the glue chip. We'll disconnect the keyboard. Take that out. I suppose we can disconnect the floppy. Just get it out of our way. Alright, so video latch, SPI, and this is all of the RAM here. And it is all MT RAM. So certainly possible that one or more or all of these have failed. What's interesting is that they're all the same chip, except this one, they all have the Apple logo and then saved MT RAM, but this one doesn't. So I don't know if it's been replaced. Can't see any signs of rework from here, but we'll look at the bottom of the board for that glue chip right here. All right, and it is soldered, not socketed, so we'll need to desolder it and replace it with this one. So that means we're going to take the whole board out to do that. Trying to get the headphone jack out, I think, and we have the board out. All right, so let's mark the glue chip on the back here. That is this row and this row. So it's important to remember which one is pin 1. It's got the little mark in it, and the replacement has a notch, but it's got the mark also, and that lines up with the dot here. So when we put the new one in, we'll want to make sure we replace it the same way. So I'll be using super wick. I do have a solder sucker, but I haven't had the best luck with it. I don't have one of the nice Hakko ones. So let's see how solder it seems to melt pretty well, so I'm not sure we'll need to add any additional new solder to it. I'll just try to desolder it. Let's try the super wick. See if we can't clean up all of this solder here. About the best we can do with the solder sucker. This chip's still going to be firmly in here, so we'll have to use the heat gun to try to get it out the rest of the way. Alright, here we go. Here's the old glue chip. Alright, so normally I would recommend installing a socket, so that if you do have to swap it out again later, it's not using desoldering. There's always the risk of damaging your board when you're taking things out, but I don't have any sockets of this size, so we're just going to solder it in and hope for the best. Alright, so again, remember, line up the markings so that pin 1 goes in pin 1 and you don't install it upside down. Not upside down, but backwards. I guess you can install it upside down, but I don't know how you solder it in. So I need to bend these pins in just a little bit so that it fits. Wonderful. And hopefully we'll do it. Maybe not quite. Let's bend them just a little more. There we go. Alright, now before I solder it in, I'm going to make sure that pin 1 is pin 1, and it is. Make sure that's in there nice and solid. Now I'm going to check to make sure all the legs made it through. One didn't get bent and stuck behind, but they're all good. So now I can go ahead and solder this on. Everything seems okay. So. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm getting my tweezers under the chip before I do anything, just a little bit, so I can get some leverage on it. For the ones with the capacitor in front, I can kind of sneak in from the side here. But for the ones without the capacitor, it's much easier just to kind of go underneath. And then I use my hot air rework station, and I just kind of evenly heat up both sides of the chip. And it doesn't take too long, and it starts to get the solder starts to get molten. Now you do want to be really careful when you're doing this. You don't want to put too much force on it because you can rip up the pads, you can rip up traces, so definitely don't force it if it's not coming up. Turn your heat up, take more time, but definitely don't apply more pressure. That's never the solution. You can give it a gentle tug every now and then to see if it's starting to get loose or not. So far this one is just starting to work its way up. So now if I heat up the end here where I think the biggest pads are, and that's the end away from the camera, it should just pop right out. And you can see it kind of re-adhered a little bit there, so instead of pulling hard, I just applied some more heat. And then we can hopefully pop it out. There we go. So, it's like that. This terrible, terrible MT RAM chip is out, and we've got a very clean board to put the new chips back into. Alright, so what we've taken out of the system are these MT4264 chips. They don't specify on them, but I am pretty certain they're 150 nanosecond, and we'll be replacing those with the Texas Instruments 4164-15, which is 150 nanoseconds. So everything I can tell, the 4264 and the 4164 are interchangeable. There might have been some specific changes to the 4264, but I don't believe the Apple IIc uses those. So we'll be replacing the 4264 with the 41. All right, so for reinstallation of the chips, first thing I do is just kind of line it up, make sure that it's going to fit. The legs are in the correct orientation. I guess not orientation, but the legs are lined up with the holes, or where the holes will be. And then I just grab it, make sure that the notches facing their correct way, and then I just heat up whatever remaining solder was there. And once that solder gets nice and melty, I place the chip on it, and I start working it in. And again, being careful not to force either side, because we still don't want to damage any of our pads or any of our traces. And after a little bit, it just kind of pops right in. And then I move on to the next one. All right, so we're reassembled enough for testing. I've got the keyboard plugged in, video, power, and I got my monitor connected and turned on. So to boot into diagnostics modes, we need to hold down open Apple, closed Apple while we turn it on. So let me do that, set the camera down. I need 3 hands to do that. All right, so that's booting up into diagnostics mode. And this takes a number of seconds to run, so we'll just be patient while it goes. Hey, look at that. System okay. The glue problem is floppy drive is back in. Got a boot disk in there. Got my monitor on. Let's power it on, see what happens. And nothing. Since everything seems to be working except for reading the floppy drive, I am thinking that it is the IWM, or the integrated WAS machine chip, that's not working. So that's this guy right here labeled IWM. Now, what's cool about that is that the Apple used IWMs in multiple systems besides the 2C, including the Macintosh Plus. So over here on this Macintosh Plus board, I have an IWM as well. So the revision is not quite the same. This is the 344-0041-A, and this is 344-0041B. But I think, from what I could tell online, they should be compatible, so I'm going to go ahead and take this one out. And this is a Mac Plus board I just had lying around. It doesn't work. I hadn't gotten around to repairing it yet, but it's going to make a good donor for an IWM if that is in fact the problem. So let me get this out and get this out and put this one in here, and we'll see what happens. All right, so here we are once again. Rechecked everything. Everything seems to be good. So let's go ahead and give it some power. Got my monitor on. I've got my boot disk in here. So let's go ahead and flip the switch. And we've got the disk spinning and seeking. And look at that, we got her booting up. Great. Well, let's get everything back together and see what we can run on this thing. Reassembly? Let's do it. Here we are booted up off the ProDOS boot disk. Everything is looking like it's working just fine. Let's take that out and check out what's on some of these other disks. And let's pop in this disk first. So this is supposedly got Sneakers, Frogger, and Qbert on it. No idea if it works, of course. Let's take a look. It does. All right, Brun. Alright, well, looks like that's working. So M is back, J is that way, K is that way, I is cross, okay. Alright, well let's check out some of these other games down here. Qbert. Red wire sucks, hit a key. Well, that's because I said the key's wrong. Anyway, it looks like everything's working, so I think we're going to call this one fixed. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next video.